Well, many thanks, Wes. And first of all, I want to thank the scientific committee for inviting me and giving the possibility to talk about this tough situation. I think we are going to enjoy a lot, and I think I'm going to learn a lot, after hearing my good friend Paolo Vivan about this. Well, the problem is that, anytime you are talking about severe BPD or ventilation of those babies, is so difficult. So I will try to just summarize what we are doing and some kind of evidence behind. So this is my disclosure. Okay, most of you remember this kind of X-ray of babies some more than 20 or 30 years ago, but still some of the babies can look like that. But today, what we are facing is this other kind of preemie babies who are prolonged connected to any kind of respiratory support, oxygen therapy for many days, sometimes months. Very tiny babies, very immature babies, where you don't have anything to do but wait. So at the end, my message is going to be wait for those babies, because sometimes most of the therapies that we are trying to use today are still improving to improve this kind of baby. So probably this is the situation. But remember this paper. This was in 2005 in the United States, when the people from New York University, they demonstrated that from the beginning, most of the very preemie babies could be managed by non-invasive respiratory support. So after this, most of the centers all over the world began to delay the use of surfactant, delay the use of mechanical ventilation, and put the babies on nasal CPAP, because as you can see over there, even babies on 23, 24, 25 weeks gestation could be very well managed by the beginning with nasal CPAP. You take a look of this paper and you look at the famous, for me, table 4. You can see two important things. Look at these numbers. When you compare those babies who were ventilated at the very beginning, invasively ventilated, to those babies who fail on nasal CPAP, you can see how you have less PDA, but an increase in the intraventricular hemorrhage grade 3 or 4, and the risk of death. What also was very important for us, excuse me, is that, for example, comparing those babies who were doing well to those who didn't, with nasal CPAP, you can see how those babies who were not doing well, they have 5 times higher risk of pneumothorax, chronic lung disease, and death or intraventricular hemorrhage. So for us, probably this means that some of the babies, even if you want, they will need to be intubated. They will need to be given surfactant. So remember, this is just in animal lab. This is a normal rat with surfactant lungs. This is at the end expiration. You can see how you have a very nice volume at the end of expiration. When you insufflate gas, you have very homogeneous increase in the lung volume. But you have the same rat without surfactant. Then, at the end expiration, all of the lungs going to be collapsed. And if you put just pressure, only pressure, like nasal CPAP, only a few areas of the lung is going to be recruited. So probably this is what is happening in some of the babies, that we please try to not intubate any of those babies, but some of them are going to go like here, and you will have to increase a lot the pressure and the FiO2. And the combination of the two probably is going to increase even more the risk of chronic lung disease. So today, when we are facing this kind of babies, we give surfactant very early, and then sometimes we have to intubate the babies. So in our institution, we use these two kinds of respiratory support for invasive mechanical ventilation, all of them combined with volume guarantee. On Friday, we are going to have a session about volume guarantee modality, so I'm not going to spend more time about this. So these three, SIMV plus volume guarantee, PSV plus volume guarantee, in some of the babies also minute volume ventilation, or the use of very early, even more frequent today, of high frequency combined with the volume guarantee modality are the two possibilities that we have with all of these babies. So for us, we use from more than 20 years PSV in the very immature babies, very tiny babies, combined with the volume guarantee modality from the last 15 years. But one of the biggest problems is to set and to know how much tidal volume do we have to use. So at the beginning, it's very easy because anytime you begin to ventilate a baby, you put, the lowest around 4 or 5 ml per kilogram of body weight. But the problem is when those babies are doing not so good, what is happening? So this is a paper just 10 years ago from the group of Professor Angrino. She demonstrated that the worker breathing, those babies who were in assist control, combined with volume guarantee modality, when they were increasing the tidal volume from 4 to 5 or to 6, there was a decrease in the work of breathing of the baby. So sometimes we put the babies on the ventilator and we decrease as much as possible the tidal volume just to prevent polytrauma. But those babies are going to have a tremendous increase in the work of breathing. So they demonstrated that as the babies are growing, you need to increase the tidal volume because all of these babies are going to have a higher or a larger dead space. And this is the same if you are using SIMV as well. So again, you can see how the worker breathing decreases when you go up to 6. And the funny thing is this same group, they repeat the study just a few months ago. And they did exactly the same. Babies less than 32 weeks gestation with more than 1 week of mechanical ventilation, and after the first week of age, they put the babies on different tidal volumes from 4 to 7 every time after 20 minutes of stabilization. And again, you can see how after 1 week, those babies with 7 ml per kilogram of body weight of tidal volume were doing much better in terms of decreasing work of breathing. So probably what we have to remember is once the baby is connected to the ventilator, we have to improve the quality of the baby combined with the ventilator by decreasing the work of breathing and keeping the baby the more comfortable as possible, because using this, you will probably decrease FiO2 and decrease the oxygen toxicity of those babies. So we have to remember even more that in most of the cases with RDS or RDS by another etiology, we have to keep the lung open. It is not only to give tidal volume, but must have the lung open. But the problem is how to do that. We have a lot of concern about which is the best manner to use this opening strategy. There is a risk of overdistation. We have to personalize depending on the baby you have. Of course, depends of if there is or not surfactant deficiency, and you have to monitorize all of these babies. This is a very old case report baby who was sent to our institution for ECMO therapy with a meconium aspiration syndrome. Some years ago, this is the X-ray how it was looking. By those days, we were using an intraarterial line catheter for continuous pH, PO2, and PCO2 monitoring. And you can see here how the baby was doing in the PaO2 with very high pressures and ventilation. You can see how the PO2 was very, very low, 50%. And the thing is, we began to give nitric. By those days, we were beginning to use the nitric, and this was very fancy for everyone. You know, many times in neonatology, we use the first drug that we have. So the baby improved just for a while. But, you know, again, the baby was doing very, very badly. So just the only thing we did is to open the lung. And we increased very fast the mineral pressure, and suddenly the baby goes to 256. So don't tell me that we are using this high PaO2. Of course not. This was only just to demonstrate that just opening the lung from this situation to this other one, the baby improves a lot. So you keep the lung open, then everything is going to be much better than without. At the end, the important thing is that, you know, after opening the lung with 25 centimeters of water of mineral pressure, we began to decrease. Of course, the first thing we do is to decrease FiO2 until 30 or 40%, and then we begin to decrease the mineral pressure. You can see how this is the PaO2, around 90, and then we begin to decrease the mineral pressure from 25, 18, 17, 16, and then we saw how the PaO2 drops just a little bit. Then we go up again to the 16, what probably is the closing pressure of the lung, plus 2 centimeters of water, and then we left the baby on 18. And the important thing, the message, is that the baby was doing exactly the same in terms of oxygenation with 18 compared to 25. So this is why we used to say that we have to individualize all of these babies and treat very differently. So this is another baby. This is just a 1,200 grams baby with this X-ray after giving surfactant. And what we did is in high-frequency ventilation, we increased the mean airway pressure from here to here, just 5 centimeters of water mean airway pressure. And you can see how the baby improves so fast. And the FiO2 drops very fast to 30%. And we could manage the baby much better. This is the lung after, and this is the lung after just 10 hours of recruitment of the lung. And this is another situation. This is a very tiny baby, 350 grams. We just increased the mean airway pressure by 2 to 3 centimeters of water, just that, and then we could decrease very fast FiO2. You can see how the tidal volume on high frequency was exactly the same. So these two things are different, and you have to combine the two to prevent the damage of the lung. And this is another very similar recruitment therapy in a baby with a meconium aspiration, 3,500 grams baby, and we have to increase a lot mean airway pressure to produce this improvement on oxygenation and decrease in the FiO2. So this is again extremely important to remember that to prevent the damage of the lung by the ventilator, we have to keep the lung open, and we have to use exactly the tidal volume that the baby needs. In such situation, we have a kind of leakage in the lung. And in this kind of babies, we used to increase very low, not too much, the mean airway pressure. And you can see how fast this baby was doing well. So the bad thing for us is to prevent overdosation still. Not very frequently, but still we have some kind of babies with this situation. But in this situation, many times what we put the baby is in this side to prevent overdosation and keep the lung open by the other side. But in some of them, we use helium. And just 2 hours after use of helium, we got this X-ray. So this is another possibility of some of the kids that you are having this kind of overdosation by this kind of emphysema. And also in some of the babies, mostly very tiny babies, not doing well after surfactant administration, we make an ultrasound of the heart. And in some of them, we have some kind of pulmonary hypertension. And this is the way they are doing not very good. So in this kind of babies, what we do is to add ionotherapy in between 5 to 10 ppm. And you can see how in this baby, this was a very tiny baby as well, with a prolonged rupture membranes. This is a typical case with pulmonary hypertension. And you can see how we could decrease after the beginning of the nitric, only with 5 ppm FiO2 from here to here. And after just a few hours, the tidal volume could be decreased as well, because the baby was doing much better. So this is the way we are doing right now in our institution. We are using from the very beginning in these very immature babies, PSV plus volume guarantee, because we give the baby the possibility to synchronize very well with the ventilator and handle by themselves the minute volume ventilation, and we use 4 at the beginning. As I tell you, on Friday we are going to talk a little bit more about volume guarantee. And if the baby is not doing so well, and the baby is less than 1,000 grams, close to 15, in between 15 and 17 of PIP, then we switch very fast to high frequency combined with the volume guarantee modality. So, okay, what can you do with those babies who are still on the ventilator? We try to extubate as soon as possible, and then put the babies on non-invasive respiratory support. So this is one of our babies, believe me. Below this thing, there is a baby connected to a ventilator synchronized with the baby respiratory effort. And we have a lot of evidence, not very good, as I'm going to show you, but a lot of evidence that non-invasive respiratory support given by nasal intermittent positive pressure ventilation can improve survival of those babies who are connected to mechanical ventilation. This is the last Cochrane meta-analysis from 2017, 10 trials. And in the results, you have a reduction of the risk of extubation failure. What we are trying to find is to take the baby out from the ventilator as soon as possible as we can and put with some kind of respiratory help, like non-invasive respiratory support. The number of babies that needed to be treated is around 9%. So in this meta-analysis, there are only 5 trials using synchronization, and all of them, they demonstrated a clear statistically significant benefit to prevent extubation failure. But what is an important thing to say is in this review, there are some kind of differences depending on the device you are using. And I think it's extremely important to know exactly which kind of device you are using and how you are using and how the device is working with the baby, just to prevent any kind of misunderstanding and try to use the one that has been tested. This is a very recent study done with non-synchronized nasal ventilation, and in this study done in very preemie babies, you can see how, if you look at how many of the breaths are really synchronized with the ventilator, if the ventilator is sending ventilation without synchronization with the baby, look at this, only 1% of the mechanical inflations are synchronized with the baby's respiratory effort. So today, we are having this big problem because not all the devices are synchronizing with the baby. We are working from some years with a flow synchronization of non-invasive respiratory support, and we published a few years ago our results of a very large study where we compare the effect of using this kind of synchronization to prevent respiratory failure after mechanical ventilation. Just look at this. When we use this kind of ventilators that can synchronize the respiratory effort with the baby, we in our institution could decrease less than 10% of the failure of the extubation of those babies. So this is clearly probably one kind of help and one kind of tool, good tool that we can use to prevent extubation failure. What about in other countries? This is a very recent review of about how many hospitals in the United States are using today non-invasive respiratory support through the years. And you can see how from 2003 to 2014, most of the institutions that were asked about the use of non-invasive respiratory support and increasing the numbers and the numbers. By the same way, this is just probably an association with, but as you can see, there is also a decrease in BPD or death in these same institutions. So something is moving on to try to keep the babies fast away from the invasive ventilation as soon as possible and connect to respiratory support non-invasively. And you know, we reviewed just a few months ago, we published these results about in our institution of the combination of different things. Because we don't think that there is only one bullet to use in this kind of babies, but the combination of many of them. Number one, not to intubate the babies in the delivery room if we can. Number two, not to intubate the baby if we can. And the number three, not to intubate the baby if we can as well. Give surfactant very early by less invasive surfactant administration from 2013. And the very, very fast use of high-frequency ventilation from 2 different periods, you can see how we didn't decrease as a whole thing the risk of BPD. But if we look at just babies in between the 26 to 29 weeks gestation or 29 to 32 weeks gestation, we did decrease very statistically significantly the risk of severe BPD, 2 or 3 grade. So probably something is doing well when you combine this philosophy of try to prevent lung damage, give surfactant very early, and try to help the babies to breathe by non-invasive respiratory support. When we review the risk factors associated with the length of mechanical ventilation, well, with the survival of BPD, free BPD, the length of mechanical ventilation during hospitalization was the most related to. So if we decrease for every day that we can decrease invasive mechanical ventilation, you will probably decrease the risk of BPD, at least severe BPD. And we when we review again the factors clearly related to survival free of severe BPD, we found that, again, birth weight and antenatal steroids, the complete therapy, was the most probably significant associated reason. So the combination of very tiny babies without steroids is going to give to us an alarm that baby probably is going to do not very well, even if you give surfactant, because the problem is not surfactant deficiency only. The problem is the immaturity of the lung and the immaturity of the entire baby. There are many other conditions not related to the lung that makes the baby to be connected to the ventilator many times, very long time. So this is the way we are doing right now. From 2013, we modify this philosophy, and we try to do not intubate any baby we can, if we can, in the labor and delivery room. The labor and delivery room is only 10 meters away from the NICU. So we can leave the baby and hold the baby to increase the lung volume very fast from the beginning. And then the combination of less invasive surfactant administration together with the high frequency combined with the volume guarantee in a new strategy would use very high frequencies, more than 15, close to 20 hertz, with very low tidal volumes. The combination of the two, for us, decreases the number of babies with severe BPD. And these are the global results in our institution for babies of less than 30 weeks gestation. You can see how 60% of them never are given invasive mechanical ventilation. And only, you can see, 8% of the babies needs more than 72 hours of mechanical ventilation. For us, a baby who is connected to a ventilator for more than 3 days is in the highest risk to develop BPD. So